So I think one of the things that was in the news recently that I think was part of that reset as well was inviting the RNC to Milwaukee in 2024. I think some people said that doing this will, start to improve the relationship with the state of Wisconsin. Other people are, I think rightfully so, very skeptical of that. Can that convention and inviting it here to Milwaukee, despite the many reasons why people might not want it here, can it be a catalyst to change that conversation?
Well, I think that this shows at least that here in Milwaukee, we are at least willing to try, right? And when you think about the RNC, no, I don't agree with any of their policies, right? And a lot of the things that they've been doing, across the country, right? And when you think about the DNC, right, when they were coming, Governor Scott Walker supported the DNC coming to Milwaukee County. And unfortunately, we weren't able to have the type of party and parade that we should have been able to have for the DNC. And we had so many businesses that had invested for the DNC. And then we didn't get the DNC because we was in the middle of a pandemic. And so many business lost out because we had to close everything down. And when you think about the RNC, forget the Republican Party. Right, so many individuals who have great businesses who've lost some money, they actually deserve the opportunity to make money from the RNC. And I look at the RNC coming to Milwaukee as an opportunity again to showcase everything that we have. In Milwaukee, we're a hidden jewel. I mean, even people who live in Milwaukee don't understand the great amenities that we have. When you look at Bradford Beach, when you look at the trails, when you look at our parks, our county-owned golf courses, and the list continues to go on and on. But I do think that this does let the Republicans know, particularly in the state Senate and in the Assembly, that we're willing to do things that they don't believe that we would do, right? And so if we have to bring in the RNC, and that gives us a little bit more headway, at least for us to get the local option sales tax, perfect. But that wasn't the sole reason to bring that here. We want to be able to showcase Milwaukee no matter what background you come from. And honestly, when you think about where we are, particularly around partisan politics, I think that the issue is that we're not coming together. And we have to find ways to bring everybody to the table so we can have some real conversations. I always go back to a quote, I believe it was Franklin Roosevelt that said, "No one cares what you know until you know how much you care." And so I know that there are people whose policies that I absolutely love and don't want to hang out with. And there's people whose policies that I actually hate, but yet they're pretty cool personally, right? And so for me, it's really about how do we, and we got all of those types of people all throughout Milwaukee County. And so how do we
You probably wouldn't give me examples of who those
I am not going to give you any examples. I like my job. But I think that at the end of the day, when you think about Milwaukee, I mean, we have different types of politics, and we're a very unique place when you compare us to the rest of the state. And so, for us, it's about how do we bring everybody to the table, Republicans, Democrats, union leaders, business owners. No matter what cloth you're cut from, how can we bring you to the table to focus on local issues that matter? Because whether you're a Democrat or Republican, you still want your garbage picked up. You still want quality education. You still want to have some type of public safety when it comes down to a health department or a police department or a fire department. There are things that happen here locally that shouldn't have partisan lines to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things that you campaigned on back in 2020 was being a bridge builder.
Yeah.
And so I think, what you're talking about now is an extension of that. One of the other things you campaigned on, and I went back to our interview from back in the before times, back in February 2020, when you were still running for this job. And I think one of the things that you said that really stood out to me in comparison to some of the other candidates was your focus on addressing segregation in Milwaukee. You said, and I'm going to quote you here, "Milwaukee County is one of the most segregated places here in the country, and I want to make it a top priority to make sure that we get off that list."
Yes.
So 2.5 years into the job, you're not going to fix that problem, obviously, but what type of progress have you been able to make addressing segregation in Milwaukee, and what type of progress do you hope to continue to make on that issue?
Great question. So, when we think about, eliminating us off that list, people will say, "You sure you'll be able to do that? That's a pretty tall order." And I absolutely think that if we can at least do it, we can at least get the ball rolling. And so, one thing that folks know is that, back in 2019, Milwaukee County was the first jurisdiction to say that racism was a public health crisis. And since that time, we have seen over 200 municipalities and states make that same declaration. And so when I was elected, we started working on our very first strategic plan in over 20 years for Milwaukee County. And we started focusing on 3 strategic focus areas. The first one is intentional inclusion, right? And so making sure that we are intentional on making sure that throughout the ranks, throughout the administration, even on the front lines, on boards, on commissions and councils, that they are reflective of this community, and we have done that. So currently half of my administration are women, and more than half of the administration are African American. And we have made the same changes in many of the different commissions, boards that we're in charge of. So that was when we talked about intentional inclusion. The second strategic focus area was about bridging the gap in health disparities and racial disparities. And we've been making those types of investments. But until we can get more money, until we can get the revenues that we need, we won't be able to move the needle as much as we want. But we have been making those investments. When you see what we've been doing around affordable housing, what we're trying to do with the Credible Messengers program with young people, we're making sure to bridge that gap. And not just for the folks here who rely on the government as a public institution, but how can we influence even some of the businesses and even how that's being talked about throughout the region. And then last but not least is this putting our money where our mouth is and actually making those investments in equity. And so one of the first things that I did was we created a grants office, a special projects and grants office to go after both federal as well as a state grant dollars so we could actually invest in equity. And so we've been doing exactly that. And when you look at what we have been able to do for the past 2.5 years, I would say it's been remarkable. And it wouldn't have been able to be done if it wasn't for the federal grant dollars that we actually received for the past 2 years. Now, if I had to grade myself on where we are, it would still be an incomplete because we still have a long road ahead of us. But I am excited about the different opportunities that have been presenting itself because we have been on this mission. And when I say this mission, we also changed the vision of Milwaukee. And our vision is that by achieving racial equity, we can become the healthiest county in the state of Wisconsin. Because when we look at all the health disparities, it's rooted in race. When we look at the economic disparities, it's rooted in race. When we look at housing, we look at incarceration, it's all rooted in race. And we have to continue to make those investments in order to make that gap much smaller, but again, give everybody, no matter where you are, the opportunity to thrive.
Housing is such an interesting piece of that, and I feel like that has really been a priority of your administration and in the county in general. What are some specifics that you might point to as ways that we can move forward? I think, you've talked about in the past wanting to bring more affordable housing projects to the suburbs, not just to the city of Milwaukee. Where do you see that type of effort going in the years to come?
Well, we can't do it alone because we can only support many of these local municipalities into actually doing it. They're the ones who control the zoning. They're the ones who control a lot of the infrastructure dollars in order to create affordable housing. But I would say we're doing what we can. So, for example, when you think about the amount of money that we've been able to pour into particularly eviction prevention, we have saved over 11,000 individuals to be able to stay within their homes, and something that we want to continue to be able to do, and that's a great thing. And in housing is really near and dear to me because, I've been evicted 3 times within a 2.5 year span. Got evicted off of 22nd and Vine, got evicted off of 24th and Lloyd, got evicted off of 29th and Walnut. And when you talk about housing insecurities, I moved every day of my life every year of my life between the ages of 13 to 24. So making sure housing stability is here for individuals is key. So we invested $19 million, and it's not to say that we're not going to assist the city of Milwaukee with affordable housing, but I truly believe that we cannot concentrate affordable housing only within the city of Milwaukee. So it's been a great opportunity to partner up with municipalities like Wauwatosa, who is looking at affordable housing projects, and some of the things that even Shorewood has done. So we are moving the needle in this, but we need more partners. We've also invested in Legal Aid Society, and we created the I don't know why I'm blanking on the name, but basically we provided landlords, tenants.
Is that
with
the right to counsel?
The right to counsel,
Yeah.
thank you. The right to counsel. We've given them the ability to have their own representation when they're going to court facing landlords, right? And so there's much more that we need to do around affordable housing, but I would tell you that that's how we spent our federal ARPA dollars. And so after 24, it's going to be hard, extremely hard for us to continue to invest in these types of programs without the state being a partner with us.
All right, I want to get through a couple other quick topics before we open up to audience questions here.
Okay.
A couple things in the news recently in the county have been, I'll say, two buildings that have uncertain futures. One is the Cogs building on 12th and Vine. The other is the Domes.
12th and Valete.
I'm sorry, I said Vine, 12th and Valete.
Yep.
What are the best options going forward for the future of those two buildings?
So I will start with the Cox building. So our goal is really to reinvest into to really replace the Cox building. And honestly, this is an upstream investment for us because we're looking at that area, right? We just opened up our mental health emergency center where we're going to be able to provide even more, critical mental health crisis services for many individuals. So for us, we're looking at how can we almost create a human service campus. And so, there was talk about whether we should reinvest or replace the Cox building or if we should lease somewhere, right? And we looked at the lease option, but when we looked at the lease option, we noticed that it would put an even bigger strain on our budget. So when you look at leases and the space that we need, it would have been an average of anywhere between $2 to $3 million annually for this type of lease. But that money comes directly out of our operating budget. And I'm already struggling to actually invest in those programs and services that need those operating dollars when it comes down to mental health, when it comes down to crisis intervention, when it comes down to X, Y, and Z. So we look at how can we really focus on this building because this is about how we invest in the people who absolutely need these services. And we still don't have enough services for many of the individuals. The services that people needed in the middle of the pandemic, they haven't gone away. They've been exacerbated. And even more people need more services now since we're somewhat coming out of it. I don't like to say post-pandemic because we're still in the middle of a pandemic. But the other thing is when we talk about the domes, and when we look at the domes in all of our Milwaukee County parks, this is an incredible asset. This is a great amenity that we have that people can enjoy year-round. And so we really need a real solid plan on how we're going to invest in the domes. Now, when you look at Milwaukee County's budget, right, we're talking about the last report that came out about really revamping and making the domes what it needs to be is about $62 million. But we're already financially strained with our budget. So making that type of investment into the domes and then trying to think about how we invest in all these other services puts a whole strain on everyone. And that's not just thinking about myself, but it's thinking about the park staff, it's thinking about the county board. We want to be able to do something, but it's going to take a long-term sustainable plan to make sure that we can make those investments. And we're looking into those things.
All right, I'm going to get a couple kind of lightning round style questions so that we get a couple fun ones maybe mixed in here too. Okay. But I'll start with a topic that is near and dear to my heart. Are we going to tear down the Stadium Freeway?
The Stadium Freeway? So I truly believe that, 175 needs to be revamped. When you think about the history of highways and things like that, that needs to be a boulevard. We need to make it great. We need to make sure that we're doing everything possible. And I truly believe when we look at transportation, I think everybody would agree in here, we definitely need to update our transportation infrastructure. But it definitely just should not come at the cost of any communities, particularly communities of color that we have historically seen.
So you and Mayor Johnson went to the same high school?
Yes, we did.
Can you tell me a story about the two of you in high school?
Well, all I would say is that everybody knew who Mayor Johnson was because he was a part of the YMCA, I forget which YMCA, I want to say Black Achievers Program. And the reason why everybody knew who he was because he would always walk around with a name tag that says, "Hi, my name is Cavalier."
So he was campaigning.
I never thought that I'd be involved in politics. He clearly knew when he was a freshman in high school.
All right, we got a lot of people here. Chance to ask a question of the Milwaukee County Executive. Come on up.
I wanted to say in terms of, we're talking about kind of county running out of money, What do you think about something like the Milwaukee County Parks Foundation that has come out in the last year, run by my great friend Becky Stoner, and raising money in a very private way for a public park? What do you think about that? Is that the future of funding, where really you need just to fundraise from people that have capacity to give?
Well, first and foremost, I want to say that Becky Stoner is an awesome and great partner. The Milwaukee Parks Foundation has been tremendous supporters of our Milwaukee County Parks. And if you did not go to the Go Green event yesterday, you missed a great party. But I think that is a great opportunity. But what I will say is that it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that we have to go to creating a private foundation in order to fund a parks that should be free and open to the public, no matter where you're coming from in southeastern Wisconsin. And so, but I will tell you that when it comes down to the parks, I mean, the amount of reduction, the cuts that we have seen from the Parks Department. In 1989, we had just over 1,000 employees, And I think as of now, when you come fast forward to now, 2022, we have less than 400, 500 employees now. And when you think about it, we have 157 parks. We got about 14 golf courses. We have miles and miles of trail space. And we don't have the staff or the capacity really to even maintain many of these things. So when you see that grass getting longer, we really don't have those bodies. And it's unfortunate that we've had to revert to like beer gardens. And I know there's nothing wrong with beer gardens. I love beer gardens too. But it's unfortunate that we've had to revert to beer gardens in order to increase revenues just to keep our park systems going. And so at the end of the day, we need to be able to invest in our parks, because I'm a fan of the parks. I think they're the beating hearts of every community, including ours. And I think that's when you think about mental well-being, physical well-being, and community wellness. These are the places where all of that intersects.
Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And thanks to all of you for being here as well.
Thank you for joining us here on Connect MKE. You can hear my complete and unedited conversation with David Crowley in my online publication, The Recombobulation Area. I'm your host, Dan Shafer, and thank you for joining us.